What's going on, everybody, and welcome back for another weekly prep. So this week I did weekly prep a little different just because I know that it is Super Bowl Sunday, and while I personally will not be watching the game, I know many of you will be, so I wanted to just record this in advance. That way maybe you got some downtime on Sunday, you could watch this video, or if you maybe watch it Monday morning or on your way to work or something like that. But I wanted to make sure that I got this out because I figured that if I did my normal, Sunday night in the cantina, I feel like it would not be as packed as normal. So, but we'll do it tonight. It'll be a little bit more brief, although I do want to look at a bunch of individual names, and that's just beyond the normal, index review, Bitcoin, dollar index, all of that. It's just, I'm not necessarily going to be taking requests or anything in this one. So it'll be good. It'll be direct, and hopefully, it'll set us up for a nice week. So I got to be honest, I think I am like officially victory lapped out. I think I've done quite a bit of victory laps over the last week since we got into that Showtime daily bearish imbalance and rejected the way that we did. We did a big stream on it that Thursday, and then of course we did another one this past Thursday where we talked about the rejection, don't fear the reaper. It's almost over, all of that kind of stuff. So let's dive into NASDAQ to start. So first off, on NASDAQ from a quarterly perspective, ultimately I don't think we're done yet. I think that we got one more low, and that one more low would bring you into your quarterly bullish imbalance, okay? And that mark is at 23,904. By getting into that 23,904, to me, there's no overhead imbalances. I think this is a reasonable placement for price to get in and ultimately move from. Now, that move that we saw on Friday, that TGIF 20 to 30% retracement of your weekly candle, which we got, which was great. It was pretty fiery, but what that did was essentially bring you into discount of a bearish price run on smaller time frames. So for example, from a 4-hour perspective, by us bouncing the way that we did, that brought us back into discount of that range. Now, there are a couple individual names that I'm looking at that did bounce a little bit more than I would have liked, but those can help us catch up. So really, the size of this move, getting into this bearish level, if we remain volatile, this could happen quickly, but ultimately, because of how fast we did, I am anticipating it taking a little bit longer to get back down into that quarterly imbalance that we referred to there. Now, there is one important thing that I think I need to bring up from a quarterly perspective, and that is that if you go too low in this quarterly imbalance here, you're actually going to negate the formation of what could be a yearly bullish imbalance, okay? If price goes to 23,114, that is going to negate this yearly imbalance from forming, and I got to be honest, from a long-term perspective, that is kind of scary. Because if you look back historically, you'll notice that every time that we've had a sustainable bull market run where we're just kind of continuing to grind higher over time, a big part of that is forming these higher time frame imbalances so that when the yearly imbalances form, when we do get that red candle into it, you're either going to have that quick crash type of move like we saw in April, like we saw with COVID, whereas you see the one here from 2022, and that took a year long, okay? And that was just a drag, right? If you're trading it, of course, you could trade it knowing that the bias would be lower in that given scenario, getting you into discount. But, as somebody who not only trades it, but also would prefer to be holding and investing for long-term purposes, I would prefer that to form at the very least. And that doesn't necessarily mean just because it forms that next year it has to go back down into it, right? In this case, you formed the yearly imbalance. The next year you got into it and then you left. But, you go back historically and we have imbalances that are open, one from 2013, another one from 2017, and so on, right? So it's not the end of the world necessarily, but it's definitely something that I am looking towards as I would prefer that to happen. Prefer for us to ultimately get into that quarterly imbalance, just get to the high, leave like 700 points for a yearly imbalance, and then move on as usual and finish out this year strong. I know we just started, but throughout the rest of the year, make progress higher. All right. So again, you go down to a weekly time frame. These lows to me are not really that safe. We did bounce out of a new week open gap here, right? That is a candle close, candle open. That is a volume imbalance. And because it happened from a weekly perspective, it would be a weekly volume imbalance or previous new week open gap. Now this low again, I'm a little hesitant on this low, just to be fair. I don't really love it all of that much. But and the main reason being, if we take out this low, that gets you into the quarterly, right? So I would anticipate it taking that out and then closing back above it. From where we are right now, we do have a couple bearish levels overhead. When you go down into the daily, you'll notice that we did leave behind relative equal lows, double the pool of liquidity in this given area. We were traced into a daily bearish fair value gap, and that's what pumped the brakes on Friday when we got into that level, and ultimately retraced just a little bit out of that to close out the week. There is one more bearish volume imbalance again, right? Candle close, candle open. We are down below it, therefore it would be a bearish pivot or a bearish new week open gap. So with all of that, again, I think, beyond just NASDAQ, I understand NASDAQ is the sixth sister of the bunch. NASDAQ is the laggard, right? You have indices taking all-time highs recently, except for NASDAQ, okay? So with that being said, I think it is important to just take a peek on the others, okay? Similarly, here on the S&P, we took out a low from December, but not quite taking out that low from November. And, based on that, again, that low is the one that's ultimately going to be the driving force in getting price to get into this quarterly imbalance as well. So SPY, it does seem like it's a little bit higher than what you have on NASDAQ right now. And you'd need a pretty dramatic move ultimately to get ES into that discounted level. Now with YM again made another high. We're still in the process of basically just grinding higher with YM at this point, right? So here's your breaker formation. You did not back tap into that breaker. There's your run. So far, again, we are well in premium of this YM range. YM was really the leader for quite some time there. And YM is also in the process of forming a new quarterly imbalance, right? It's just very, very strong. Come on over here to the weekly time frame. Look at YM. You'll notice YM got into a bullish imbalance. We did take out that low. That's at 506. This low here is 488. I'm sorry, we did not take out that. Or no, we did. 506. 488. No, we didn't. We have relative equal lows. Yikes. So relative equal lows down here on YM as well. And then Russell got into a weekly bullish imbalance, and so far so good. All right. So that's kind of where I'm at with indices. I'm not totally sold that our bottom is in. I would feel much more comfortable if price just got into that quarterly imbalance. And again, big move Friday. That's that TGIF setup that we talked about Thursday night. Tends to happen quite frequently. And really what that 20 to 30% is really just leading you into the next week of getting price back into discount of that range so that you can ultimately set up for another leg down. All right. So that is NASDAQ. Now, let's talk about, where is it? Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, obviously very, very rough week. Nice response to close out the week, but very, very rough. But the big takeaway from me on this Bitcoin move is that Bitcoin has now gotten into its yearly bullish imbalance, okay? Getting into that yearly bullish imbalance, to me, is very good, okay? This is what we've been talking about since early December. I got the tweets for it. I can, if you just go on my page and just do @MandoTrading with the $ BTC, you will see that we've been talking about this for quite some time. Price ultimately got down into a bullish imbalance here on the yearly time frame back in 2022, prior to a huge move higher following that. Very similarly here, you have a bullish price run. You got into a discounted bullish imbalance here. So far, so good. But am I exactly sold that it is the low? I'm not so sure about that, actually. Okay? So from a quarterly perspective, you'd really want this to close above that 71.6. You close above 71.6, you're in pretty good shape. What would be even more bullish would really be a close above 74.434. That is your previous sell side target. But we are in discount now, so I'm personally not necessarily looking like, okay, I think Bitcoin can go lower, but I'm trying to short it. It's not the case. It's more so, if I look at this from like a larger scale perspective, like this is my DCA type of range. I would be looking to add in, build a position inside of a discounted yearly imbalance. Now, I think there's one thing that is, a little sus and I think could cause some problems, and that would be 49,577. Now, 49,577 is pretty far away, but taking out that liquidity inside of that bullish yearly imbalance, I think that would actually be really, really bullish moving forward. That's not to say that it necessarily has to happen. I've already gotten my move that I anticipated. First bearish imbalance forms, price gets into the first bearish imbalance, rejects out of showtime, and ultimately goes to chase discount of the range. Like that was really what I was looking for and hoping for in this case, and we got it, so that's great. But now, like I said, there is that one low that's kind of sticking out like a sore thumb. Is it completely necessary for us to get into that? I'm not so sure about that. But if you were to form a monthly imbalance here, so if at no point this month Bitcoin can get up into 83,814, you're going to create another monthly bearish imbalance. And if that's the case, price can very well retrace into that monthly imbalance and then reject lower from that point. That would just be the one, bit of skepticism that I have about Bitcoin moving forward. Now, if you can prevent a monthly imbalance from forming, you really don't have anything overhead, which is like kind of crazy to, as quickly and as how much we've gone down on Bitcoin. I mean, it technically could be erased really quickly if you can prevent an imbalance from forming. But if that imbalance does form, I would be a little skeptical us getting through a monthly imbalance in one shot. It doesn't tend to happen too often, so we'll see. But I'm glad that we got discounted. Much needed, right? We were trading like garbage for months there. Like we needed this. I know a lot of people panicking and all of that stuff, but when you're trading as poorly as we were, kind of just sitting around in range for how many weeks? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks. It's like, all right, enough is enough. Let's draw it down. Let's go get some liquidity lower so that we can speed this thing up and start moving back higher again. So I don't necessarily think Bitcoin's low has been put in. What would change that for me? It would just simply be like the formation of a bullish imbalance here, really, even from a daily perspective. If you get a daily bullish imbalance here, I think you're going to ultimately end up chasing 79K. And then again, remember that 83 is really the mark. If you can get up to 83 and maybe even into the last bearish daily imbalance here, that would be good because it would preventing monthly from forming. And if that monthly gets prevented, then you can kind of move freely through that region of the chart without necessarily having to go get liquidity again. So that's Bitcoin. It really is kind of going to be the recurring theme as we talk about a bunch of different names here tonight. But to me, we need to form daily bullish imbalances. We need to show some sort of urgency that we actually want to move higher. And if we could do that, then, now I have structure behind the idea. Just because I hit the higher time frame level, if we're not showing urgency to move higher, then I'm not necessarily so gung-ho about taking that trade, just to be fair. I need that imbalance to form. That gives me the structural guide. That's my entry. That's my stop loss. That's where ultimately I'm going to be looking to target, right? And this is what my odd NAM trading model is, right? You probably have heard me talk about the Mando model. Only the people that are in Galaxy Trading know about the odd NAM model, really. But that model is equally as powerful, and essentially you need odd NAM to get your Mando model. So, and in short, what the odd NAM is that first imbalance in the opposing direction, which would ultimately imply a 50% retracement of that range. And if you get that, then ultimately I'm looking for price to go into discount of that bearish range. So that's Bitcoin. All right. I know there was a ton of news on Bitcoin this week. So now, I do want to take a look at a couple names, specifically some names that are closely tied to indices. And the reason I'm going to be looking at these names that are closely tied to indices is because, again, I'm thinking to myself, all right, is NASDAQ's low in, or do we need to go take another low? Like, that's really the ultimate question. And for me personally, again, I would prefer the imbalance to form. I'd rather be late and right than a tad early and wrong, right? Especially when it comes to trading short-dated contracts or something like that. Like, when you look at things from like a higher time frame perspective, like a monthly or a weekly, quarterly, anything like that, I don't necessarily mind as much if I'm early or not, because I'm just basically using that higher time frame imbalance as an area of accumulation. But if I'm trying to trade short term and I need to be precise because there is a there's a clock on my trade. Like I can't be, a week and 500 points off because these contracts are going to expire, right? I need to be precise in terms of the time. Then I need that imbalance to form, right? I'd rather be late when it comes to options, be able to actually structure an idea, and in the grand scheme of things, you're really not late, right? You're just essentially waiting for confirmation, and for me, that confirmation would be that first imbalance forming. If I can get that first imbalance to form, I'm thrilled, right? Because now I have the whole structural guide for the whole idea, right? So, with that being said, I want to take a look at some of the Mag 7 names in this call. Now, I'm going to do independent clips of some other names I got into discount and just some that I'm going to talk about. But just for the purpose of this video, I am going to talk about specifically some of the Mag 7 names just to kind of get an idea. Because, off the top of my head, I know Tesla did not quite reach its higher time frame discount. I know Nvidia did not get into its higher time frame discount. And I think that might be it. Because Amazon did with its earnings move. Apple did. Microsoft did. Meta will look at it. And Netflix did. Am I missing one? No, I think I got them. All right. All right, so the first one let's look at the big dog. Let's look at NVIDIA. And here's the thing about NVIDIA. Very similarly to what you see on NASDAQ in general, it's essentially the same. Now, NVIDIA had a huge move on Friday, okay? So basically what that means to me is that while I don't think the low is necessarily in, by moving the way that we did, unless we keep this same level of volatility going into next week, this is probably just going to get drawn out a little bit, take a little time. I know it has earnings towards the end of the month, but this quarterly imbalance to me does not, it looks safe when price would get into it, but the fact that price isn't in it right now is a little sus. You're going to leave behind relative equal lows as well, which is not ideal in this scenario. So ultimately, I do want NVIDIA to get into that 169.55. And more specifically, I believe it's a weekly level, but let's see, NVIDIA, there's a swing low in there. I think it's at like 164 or something like that. Yeah, 164.07. I'm a little skeptical knowing that we do have relative equal lows. I mean, this would be even bigger, and I'm not necessarily so sure that we have to go see 151, but that could be potentially like a wick scenario where you wick down into that bullish area. But there's a lot of confluence in that area. But I think at this point, really, you take 164, you're already inside of a quarterly imbalance. I think that's pretty good. But I do think it's going to go lower. And if I think NASDAQ's going lower to get into that quarterly imbalance, I mean, NVIDIA has to play a big role in that. Another one there would be Tesla. So Tesla got close, but not quite there. Okay, there is a weekly bearish imbalance that's way higher on Tesla. I'd prefer us to go get that 382 relative equal low prior to getting into that level. The reason for that is because if we are going to draw price on Tesla up to 457, you're probably going to go way higher on indices. And again, just could draw out the process. I want this to be done quick. I want the quarterly to get tagged and then ultimately start making progress immediately off of that so that we do ultimately move higher throughout this year. I don't want this long drawn out thing where we're taking months to get into discount of their ranges. I don't think that benefits anybody really. So Tesla's just another one, little high for me, knowing that we have relative equal lows. So Apple would be one where Apple got into that quarterly bullish imbalance, right? The same thing that we're talking about NASDAQ, the same thing that we're talking about NVIDIA. The only difference here is that Apple already got into it and Apple responded. Look how Apple responded off of just a slight wick into that 244 area, right? We're already up, $34 from that point. So that's a pretty intense move. Now, again, I would like the same exact thing to happen elsewhere. And again, I don't necessarily think Apple would have to go and take out this quarter's low again. But if everything else were to retrace lower, then, maybe even Apple takes a, $10, $15 haircut to kind of get everything to align together inside that discount. Another one is Microsoft. Microsoft is currently way below its premium bullish quarterly imbalance. We can technically, close the quarter back inside this and all would be fine. That's above 448. That's a pretty big move now, and with less than 2 months to go. If that's the case, I mean, this is really the oh shit scenario for Microsoft here. It would be at 309. That's another 100 points to the downside, basically. So that would be the oh shit moment. You do have a quarterly imbalance here. I'm sorry, a quarterly sell side target at 344 there. I'm curious, do we have anything on the yearly on Microsoft? We do. We got into the yearly last year and we bounced from that point. There is a yearly bullish volume imbalance here on Microsoft. I don't necessarily know if we need to take out this yearly low. As you can see, there's multiple yearly lows all the way down in that 211 range, but I don't think that this is the time for those necessarily just yet. So that's Microsoft. I wanted to look at Netflix as well. Netflix, another one that has already gotten into its discounted quarterly imbalance. Now, if price were to draw lower on indices, could you potentially see Netflix wick down into like 70 to get into this quarterly breaker? I think that's a possibility. But overall, we're in discount. This is a good start or a good starting point really for Netflix to put its foot in the ground and start moving higher, because the Mando model here would complete at 134. But based on this being a quarterly setup, likely going to take some time in order to do that. Amazon. Now, Amazon from like a quarterly perspective, or really anything above like the monthly or weekly, it's kind of scary. I'm not going to lie, but here's your monthly from your low up to your high. You are discounted inside of that discounted monthly bullish imbalance. So far, so good. Pretty nice wick off those lows. That's a $9 move higher. Ideally, you would close the monthly back above 211. That would, consider this a protected low, and then from that point I would really want price to draw higher. So as much as I think this move was absolutely necessary across the board, I don't think it's going to be long and drawn out. I think this could actually start moving a little bit quicker. Now, one that's I'm a little bit more skeptical on in comparison to the others is Meta. Meta has some pretty bad relative equal lows here, and that would get you down into like 582. So at this point, it's like 80 points away. That's pretty scary. But by taking out those relative equal lows, gets you into this discounted monthly volume imbalance. I think that would be not bad. Do you necessarily have to go clean up those lows right now? I'm not so sure, but to me that would make me way more comfortable if we did. So anyways, short and sweet. Before we go, let me just pull up the economic data for this week, and I'll see if I can get an earnings calendar quickly too. But like I said, when it's not live and there's nobody asking questions and stuff, these can go a whole lot quicker. So let me just go directly to the site. Here it is. Okay. So for this week, I gotta shift over the week of the 8th. Monday, we have no red folder data. Tuesday, we have retail sales at 8:30 a.m. Wednesday, we have non-farm employment change at 8:30 in the morning. Thursday, we have unemployment claims. And Friday, we have CPI. So we really do have a packed week minus Monday of this week. Now, I believe they canceled the non-farm payroll, so I don't think they're going to bring that back up or anything like that. But that was one thing last week that was a bit funky. Now, let me come over here and just see earnings-wise if there's anything worth noting, because now we kind of got through most of the Mag 7. NVIDIA is usually last. But let's see. Hold on. Here we go. All right, so next week's earnings, we have Cleveland Cliffs. We have, and that's Monday morning. After hours on Monday, we have On Semiconductors, ON, and we have Open. Remember that one? What's Open at right now? Let's see. With all this, I haven't seen anybody tweet about it. So, wow, it actually held up pretty well considering. I have an alert on Open at $4, and then I have another one at 170. There's not necessarily a monthly imbalance there, but let's see from a quarterly perspective. Whoa, we're inside of a quarterly bullish imbalance and a quarterly breaker. Wow. It's not bad. Yeah, and there's a weekly lines up with here. Yeah, one more low across the board would make me so happy. It looks like a lot of names could get into their discounts there. Um, Tuesday morning, you have Coke, CVS, Spotify, Datadog, Fiserv, which got smoked on its last earnings call. And that Oscar Health, another one I was going to do a standalone video on. I'll pull this one up quickly. It's about to get into a yearly bullish fair value gap, so we're close. I want us to get in there really badly, and then from there I want us to go higher. Um, but after hours on Tuesday, you have Robinhood. Robinhood is discounted on its higher time frame. A-Lab, Lyft, Ford, Upstart, Gilead, Net. Wednesday, you have Shopify and Unity. Thursday or Wednesday after close, you have AppLovin, you have Albemarle, whatever it's called, ALB. You have Cisco, you have Fastly. Thursday, you have MBIS, Nebius. I thought Nebius had earnings last week. Maybe not. I don't know that one's in a quarterly imbalance or tagged a quarterly imbalance too. Crocs. And then Thursday after close, you have Coinbase, Pinterest, Rivian, Toast, DraftKings, AMAT, Expedia, Dutch Bros. Friday, you have Moderna, Wendy's, CCJ. Is that nuclear? I believe. Uranium, I think. Advanced Auto Parts. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's really even tradable, but so that's our earnings report for this week. So we do have a packed week. So, anyways, I think that's all for now. So this week's schedule, we will do no live trading Monday. We're going live trading Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, with the potential of a Friday. We'll see how it goes. Let's see if there's a huge overnight move on one of those days. Maybe I push one day off just based on, if we get a huge overnight move, I wouldn't really anticipate a smaller time frame or an AM session like to be all that active. So maybe I'll push that to Friday if that's the case. But then for EDU purposes, we'll do Tuesday night. We'll definitely do Thursday night. I have two new 2026 mentorship videos. They'll be dropped in that channel on Discord. So yeah, I think that's it for this week. So if anybody has any questions or any anything they want to bring up, feel free to comment on this. But that's all I got for this week. So I wish everyone good luck, and we will talk soon.